everybody, welcome to Langer at the Mic. I'm Mike Langer. Of course, the Montreal Canadiens are coming off of Tuesday's exciting 3-2 win against the Tampa Bay Lightning, which hurts their chances at the tank, sure, but the Habs don't beat the Lightning very often, and it was just an all-around very exciting game. Bell Center chanting Ole and doing the wave late in the third period, so I could be happy for that. But before that, the Canadiens had their team photo day on Monday, where on the Habs Instagram page, they posted a carousel of photos of the different groups of players on the roster, such as all the players named Mike or all the players that have J as the first letter of their first name. But one that really stood out was the 2000 squad, all the players on the Montreal Canadiens roster that were born in the year 2000 or later. Of course, the Habs, they're a rebuilding team, so they've had to dress a lot of young players in their lineup this year, especially rookies. 11 to be exact. According to NHL.com, 11 rookies have played at least one game for the Montreal Canadiens this season. That's tied for the most by any team in the NHL alongside the Columbus Blue Jackets. So today, I'm going to rank those 11 Habs rookies both based on their performance of this year and in terms of their importance to the Montreal Canadiens in the future. I'm also going to talk about what I want and what I hope their roles will be by the time the Habs finish their rebuild. So let's start with number 11, and that is Allard. Wait, who? He's a défenseur de chez nous that was acquired in the Nate Schnarr trade from the Preds. He's 25 years old. He played only one game with Nashville last year, and he played only 11 minutes in one game with the Montreal Canadiens this year against Vegas. His contract also expires after this year, so not much to say other than the fact that he could be an extra right-handed defenseman for Laval, who isn't really good this year. Now number 10, Anthony Richard. Wait, I just realized I could have put him number 9 just for fun, but oh well. Anthony Richard, not Maurice Richard, he's just another 26-year-old gars de chez nous that pretty much is a career AHLer, but he's been a nice story this year, having scored 24 goals, 55 points in 49 games with Laval, both career highs in the AHL for him. But he's been making the most of his opportunities in the NHL this year, having scored 3 goals and collected 5 points in 13 games with the Habs. With that being said, I don't think he should be more than a 12th or 13th forward, but he has definitely earned himself at least another contract once his current deal expires this summer. Ideally, Anthony Richard should just keep lighting it up in Laval and then keep making the most of his opportunities in the NHL every time he gets called up, and then we'll just take it from there. Number 9, Ylonen. I really like his skill set. I think it's perfect for the modern NHL. He has good speed, he has a good shot, he plays a tenacious game, and he has finally established himself as someone who should be a regular in the Habs lineup, and I'll be pounding the table for him to have a regular roster spot on the Montreal Canadiens next year, especially over guys like Mike Hoffman and Yoel Armia. However, his overall lack of consistency kind of makes him difficult to project. He could very well end up being the next Artturi Lehkonen, who can play in all situations and be a good complement to a star player. Or he could just end up being kind of another body that plays about 11 to 12 minutes a game in a fourth line role. That's why I have him slotted in right now as just a future bottom 6 winger, and that's pretty much it. Number 8, Raphaël Harvey-Pinard. Ah yes, the guy being tapped as Brendan Gallagher 2.0, of course. And for good reason. He was a 7th round pick, he plays an intense game despite his lack of size, and he might even be a little bit more skilled than Gallagher was at similar points in his career. He has 9 goals and 14 points in 27 games, and he's only one of 3 Habs rookies with a plus rating, which means something because he's played on a line with Nick Suzuki over 50% of the time, which means that he's over 50% of the time playing against the other team's best players at even strength. And of course, he's another guy that I'll be pounding the table for to have a regular roster spot on the team next year. But with that being said, by the time the Habs are done their rebuild, he should not be more than a complement to a star player on the second line or an energy player in the bottom 6 who can kill penalties, maybe play a little bit on the second power play unit. I just hope they don't make the same mistake with Raphaël Harvey-Pinard that they made with Gallagher, where they wear him down and give him a $6 million contract when unfortunately he doesn't have anything left in the tank anymore. Now let's go to number 7, and that is Owen Beck. He's the first guy I have on this list more for what he will mean to the Montreal Canadiens in the future versus what he means to them right now. He played under 10 minutes in his one and only NHL game so far against the Ottawa Senators on an emergency call-up basis. But he's been absolutely lighting it up in the OHL, his second OHL season with Mississauga and now Peterborough, And I think he's just one of those guys that just has the intangibles, and he plays with like an insane level of hockey IQ and does so many little things right, even though he might not have a generational skill level. I just remember in the pre-draft process, that video the Montreal Canadiens released on their YouTube channel way back when, where Owen Beck, when he was being interviewed, like usually when you go in an interview setting, you as the interviewee are supposed to be nervous and the interviewer is supposed to put the pressure on you. But I remember during Owen Beck's interview, it felt more like Owen Beck was actually putting pressure on the Montreal Canadiens, that like the front office that were asking him the questions, just based on how confidently and assertively he answered their questions. The Habs also already signed him to his entry-level contract as an 18-year-old, so clearly they have high hopes for him as well. I think, or hope, once all is said and done, he'll eventually be the Montreal Canadiens' third-line center, but a very, very important one at that, because I think he'll be a key reason to their success, because he'll have to take on all the important matchups and be assigned to win all the important faceoffs in the defensive zone and on the penalty kill, and he'll of course help with matching up against the other team's top two lines in a playoff scenario. That brings us to number 6, Justin Barron. He's had a bit of an up and down season after suffering a season-ending injury last year. He wasn't good enough to make the roster out of camp, which pretty much prompted the Habs to acquire the number 5 player on this list. But the time in Laval earlier this season seemed to have helped him, because he now has 14 points in 28 games as a defenseman. He has good potential as a two-way D-man with good puck skills, good skating, good passing, and he's still only 21 years old, so there's plenty of time to reach that potential. But he's still very much a wild card at this point in his career, and I could think of many defensemen that the Montreal Canadiens drafted in the first round and were pegged to become either first or second pairing defensemen. I'm talking about Jared Tenorti and Nathan Beaulieu and Noah Juulsen, of course. But I have Barron at number 6 because of how thin the Montreal Canadiens are on the right side of their blue line. So I want to see Barron ideally become a second pair right-handed defenseman, kind of like the Leafs have in Timothy Liljegren, or at the very least be a third pair defenseman that is more of a regular than Chris Weidman. And along those lines, my number 5 rookie is Jonathan Kovacevic. Yes, he counts as a rookie even though he's the third 25-plus-year-old on this list. He pretty much arrived out of nowhere as a waiver pickup from the Jets, but like so many others on this list, he just simply made the most of his opportunities that were given to him by the Montreal Canadiens at the NHL level. He's been thrust into a pretty significant role, playing over 17 minutes a game and over 60 games so far this year. He's 6'4", he's a really good skater for his size, he's physical. But the problem with Kovacevic is the unknown. He's a late bloomer, which means he could have untapped potential that he could reach with a little bit more NHL experience, or on the other hand, what he is right now is what he will be for pretty much his entire career. The reason why I have him ranked so high on this list, both in terms of his performance this year and importance to the future, is because Kovacevic has proven himself to be an NHL caliber right-handed defenseman, which again, as I mentioned, the Canadiens don't have many of in their system right now. And he's under contract for pretty much vet minimum for another 2 more years, which is insane value given how he's played this year and how he could possibly play even better in those next 2 years. So he will definitely have either some kind of role on the blue line, or he could be used as a complementary trade piece. My ideal projection for Kovacevic, though, is for him to either battle it out with Justin Barron for that second pair position on the right side, ideally with a really, really good left-handed defenseman like Lane Hudson, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, or to simply be a versatile third pair defenseman, kind of like a right-handed version of Brett Kulak. My number 4 rookie on the Montreal Canadiens is none other than Juraj Slafkovsky. Kind of like Owen Beck, I have Slafkovsky ranked at number 4 because of how much the Montreal Canadiens desperately need him to reach his potential to justify his number 1 overall selection. I mentioned in my video last week how this was a fail of a rookie season for Juraj Slafkovsky, but again, as I also mentioned, that I put the blame more so on the front office and coaching staff for seemingly not having a clear plan for Slafkovsky in his rookie season. And that of course was capped off by Slafkovsky suffering a season-ending injury. So again, the only point I need to make for Slafkovsky's importance is that the Habs made the difficult decision of selecting him first overall at home in front of their fans in a draft where there was no consensus first overall selection. So the Habs have to get it right, or right with Slafkovsky and avoid having another Kotkaniemi or Galchenyuk situation on their hands. Which is why by the end of the rebuild, Slafkovsky better be a Mikko Rantanen type player, or at the very least, he'd better be a first-line winger who scores 30 to 40 goals a year and consistently impacts the game with a 6'4", 240-pound frame that he was drafted for. Number 3, Arber Xhekaj. Yes, Wi-Fi, jackhammer, the former Costco employee, the undrafted free agent. What an amazing story he's been. I'll just say right now, though, that I do not project Xhekaj to become more than a third pairing defenseman on the Habs once the rebuild is done, especially with all the left-handed defensemen the Canadiens already have in their system, including the top 2 on this list. But I have Xhekaj ranked this high because, all kidding aside, he's just such a unicorn of a player. His blend of size, his immense physicality, his ability to lay a beating on pretty much any of the best fighters in the NHL, while also being a solid actual defenseman and being loved by his teammates. He might not have a lot of value on paper or stats-wise, but his unique blend of everything I just mentioned makes him, in my opinion, irreplaceable, which I think will eventually make him one of the most important role players in the NHL. Number 2, Jordan Harris. I find Jordan Harris flies under the radar because there isn't really anything about his game that wows you the way some of the other young defensemen in the Habs system can. Like, Jordan Harris is not the biggest, he's not the fastest, he's not the most skilled, and he's just another left-handed shot. However, all of that also makes him one of the most underrated players on the Montreal Canadiens roster. Jordan Harris is incredibly smart. He's consistently in great position defensively. He knows how to and when to use his stick or his skates or even his legs sometimes to block a shot or passing lane, and he's also super poised with the puck on his stick. He's also only 22 years old, so I think he'll be a solid second pair defenseman for a long time. But if I'm being honest, he might have to be the odd man out in terms of the left-handed defenseman on the Canadiens, which means that he should either settle for a role on the right side or even possibly be traded to make room for a true top pairing right-handed defenseman. Because that's one of the 2 big things that the Habs are missing in their system: a top pairing right-handed defenseman along with a true franchise #1 goaltender to replace Carey Price. They have centers, even though most of them are really young or hurt. They have plenty of skilled wingers. They have plenty of capable left-handed defensemen. They have the opportunity to possibly add a superstar forward in the draft. But they do not have a right-handed defenseman that's capable of playing on the top pair, which I believe is definitely a necessity to being a true Stanley Cup contender. I'm not saying the Habs have to go out and get a Cale Makar or Adam Fox or Prime Shea Weber or Chris Letang. Obviously, those defensemen are extremely hard to come by, and they would help, of course, but at the very least, an Eric Chernak or a Ryan Pulock or a Colton Parayko type of player that can eventually play on the top pairing alongside one of the many really good left-handed defensemen the Canadiens have in their system. So I'm unfortunately falling for the trap of underrating how important Jordan Harris could possibly be to the Habs defense, but I also see him as the most valuable tradable piece that can be used to eventually go out and acquire that first pair right-handed defenseman. Regardless, Jordan Harris is still my number 2 ranked rookie on the Montreal Canadiens this season. Which brings me to my number 1 ranked rookie on the Montreal Canadiens, both in terms of his performance this year and in terms of his importance to the future, and that is none other than Kaiden Guhle. From day 1 of the regular season, when both Joel Edmondson and Mike Matheson were injured, Kaiden Guhle had to be the man, and he most definitely was. He's been averaging over 20 minutes a game this season, often playing against the other team's best players, which actually allowed the Habs to win a couple of games back in the fall when they were actually fighting for a playoff spot. He's big, he's physical, he has an underrated poise with the puck, and he proved that he could handle big minutes at the NHL level, and of course, he's only 21 years old. His season has been riddled by sitting out 8 weeks due to injury, and it was also just announced that he's out for the season with a high ankle sprain, so you could argue that his playing style could lead to durability concerns, but he is still remarkably tough and able to play through a lot of pain. So I don't think he would have sat out as many games if the Habs were actually pushing for a playoff spot. I think Guhle could definitely be a top pairing defenseman, although he might never be a Norris Trophy winner or a juggernaut power play specialist, but I think he'll be more than capable of playing a steady two-way game against the other team's best players, especially if he's surrounded by other D-men that complement his skill set, which the Habs currently have on their roster and their system outside of, as I mentioned, a right-hander that's better than David Savard. Well, that's all for this video. So now tell me, how would you rank the 11 rookies on the Montreal Canadiens this season? Let me know in the comment section below. But as usual, hit like, hit subscribe, give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Mike Langer for both. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time.